There's been some height requirement changes at Kings Island that's going to affect families. We have an update on the Beast, more progress being made out in Soak City Water Park, and there's a new perk possibly with Prestige. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. Thank you so much, Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Logan Litber, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Stephen Hornack, Eric Grau, Ian Crawford, Dustin Jackson, Songster Smiku, and Dakota Cole. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and hey, some tiers you can get some free stuff. So hit that link in the description.
Ryan, let's start out with the height requirement changes. They were quietly updated on Kings Island's website. No announcement from the park about these changes, just quietly put out there on the website. But some of them are pretty significant.
Yeah, they're significant and they are a really big deal. So if you're, 17, 18 years old, or, maybe even as old as 21, 22, this means nothing to you, admittingly. If you've got kids, this is a big deal. And we're going to start off with the biggest one here. The bat, previously 48 inches. That's a screen grab from the visitor's guide from last year. Now the website's listing it at 42 inches. That's a 6-inch drop. And that's going to make it so this ride is far more accessible to younger kids. And it's such a great transitional ride. I'm really excited about this change.
Yeah, I am too. I think that's a good change. It's a ride that, it's fun, it's thrilling, but it's not turbulent or anything like that. You're not getting any real, an abundance of airtime or anything. So I think dropping it from what it was to 42 inches is a good thing. And like you said, it's going to open it up to a lot more guests to be able to experience this attraction. It's going to be something that parents and the younger thrill seekers are going to be able to enjoy together.
Absolutely. Like I said, if you've got a kid that's, 6 inches is a big difference. That's like 2 years in growing ages, So I'm really excited for that. I can't really say Kings Island made the right or wrong decision. I'm not in a position to say that. But what I will say is, from the outside looking in, I think it's incredibly exciting. And if you've got a family, you should be excited about it as well.
Yeah. And in this situation, Ryan, it's not like, changes we've seen over the years. I can recall when the racer height requirement, increased, and it was hard to explain to the youngsters who may have ridden it the year before why you can't this year.
Yeah,
and that's happened with other attractions around the park. So in this case, it's going to be a nice surprise for the kids when their parents say, "Let's go ride the bat," and the kids maybe were thinking, "I'm not there yet."
Yeah, unfortunately, and I'm sure that, as of this recording, the park has not said anything about this. I'm sure that they will eventually. It's going to be really important to get the word out, because it seems like our field reporter Noah, his dad knows the height requirements to every ride because he's been waiting for Noah to get tall enough to ride them. So they have to make sure that the word is out and people are educated on the fact that a lot of these have changed. They have to go back to the map and see, because their kids might be able to ride more rides than previously expected. All right, next up. That's where everybody started, essentially. Great Pumpkin Coaster. 40 inches tall to ride alone, or 36 with a supervising companion. Now the website just says 36 inches tall is the only requirement. So they eliminated the supervising companion requirement. Very interesting. I would say that this is a little bit more surprising than the bat, because I always felt the bat, like the height requirement for a lot of these rides, are kind of like they could probably go a foot shorter and everybody would be okay. Like, I know there's more to the formula than people might fly out, but this one, I always like the supervising companion thing because they can make sure that the kids stay seated and so on. While with this, they no longer have that. So the fact that they're comfortable with this is really kind of reassuring. So I like this. I like this change. I think part of it is that, if an adult is 6 foot tall, 6'1", they really can't fit in it to be a supervising companion.
Yeah,
that's really exciting.
The other thing too, Ryan, where this is a good move is, say you're the mom, You're there. You've got two kids.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to write it twice.
Mhm.
Each one they can write it together. The two kids. So I think that just makes it a lot easier. For families, a lot less stressful trying to find that second person to ride with the other child, so they don't have to sit out.
You know what popped in my head? I thought this was the direction you were gonna go with your comment, but also, if a rider is 40 inches tall and they wanna ride and you've got another kid that's in a stroller, you have to tell them no because you can't leave the kid alone necessarily. I'm sure they got parent swap and stuff, but I don't think you'd wanna leave an infant with a stranger or anything. So this way, it's kinda like, "Okay, go ahead and ride, we'll wait here." I think that's kind of like the spirit of what they're doing. Um, Very, very positive change. This is also very, very good. Next up, shake, rattle, and roll. We've done an episode on this previously. Guests must be 50 inches tall or to ride alone, or 42 inches tall and accompanied by a supervising companion. Now, 42 inches tall. Uh, you have to be 42 inches tall with a companion, or 54 inches tall to ride alone. So that changed quite a bit. So that went up.
Yeah, that one's going to be a problem for some families because it's going to take some people out of it.
Yeah, and so how do you like when did the racer change its height requirement? Was that back in like
Well,
the
it's been
early 90s?
gradual. I mean, over the years, it's been, multiple times that it has changed. It's gone from like 44 to 46, 46 to 48. So it's been, different times. It wasn't just one change to it. So um, this one though was a little surprising, like you said. 54 inches to ride alone. I think that there was a lot of guests that before when they were 50 they could ride alone. Now they can't.
Yeah. What kind of conversation do you see? I would take the route of we didn't change the height requirement, you got shorter when the kids were able to ride last year, but not this year.
Yeah, I mean it's but the thing about it too, and you look at some of these rides, you go to Disney, you know, um, and there's a lot of rides that, in some ways, comparable to the experience that you're getting on some of these rides, and the height requirements and that are much much shorter.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, this is not necessarily a Kings Island thing or Six Flags thing. A lot of times, it's the manufacturers, it's the state. There are a lot of hands in it. There is
Yeah,
some regulation in terms of the forces that can be had on people's bodies based on their height and so on. I don't think that's the case with this. That's a pretty massive swing. I think that I I
might have
don't
been
think
done for
who's
more consistency too across the board. Now that you've merged with all the legacy Six Flags parks, we didn't go through and see what each one of their height requirements were for similar type rides.
right,
So maybe it was just getting everybody together and just let's have some consistencies, especially now that there is the, all park passport. A lot of people taking advantage of that. If you go to, Kings Island, you should be able to ride a similar ride at Six Flags Over Georgia. There shouldn't be any difference there for you and the family members in that. So maybe that was part of it too. Just having some more consistency. Like I said, we did not go park by park. Somebody that's
right,
listening may have a better answer for us than that. But you're right too. There's also things that get involved. The manufacturers, they pay close attention to what the manufacturers a lot of times recommend, and what the minimum is. Sometimes the parks go a little bit above that, and just as a precaution and stuff. But again, what else do we have?
yeah. I mean, well, the only thing is, if it's a consistency thing, you would think that 50 inches tall has proven itself to be safe over the past 30 years. Well, 40 years really. I don't know. Again, we don't know the reason for these changes. All we're doing is reporting on the changes and speculating on anything beyond that.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing PR at the park, I would just be given, an update. We're going to be changing these heights. Can you update the rider safety guide? And at that time, it was the park map. There wasn't as much information on the website like there is now too. So it was just, can you update and let everybody know, get the word out. Which meant letting the media know and letting KI Central know, and however I could to make sure there were no surprises.
Perfect. Next up, Viking Fury. So guests must be 48 inches tall to ride alone or 40 inches tall and accompanied by a supervising companion. New, they went from 48 inches tall uh, 40 inches tall to ride alone down to 46. That's a 2-inch drop. So that's like a year's worth of growth from my calculation. And the 40 inches tall, 40 inches tall to ride with a companion has not changed. So I don't think that this is necessarily an accessibility thing as far as the positiveness goes, but I think that kind of what you were saying about the Great Pumpkin Coaster really kind of pays tribute to this as well, as far as you don't have to try to ride it twice if you've got 2 kids, and or if you've got a kid that's too short, you can let the other one ride and you just wait.
Right.
But this is a great transitional ride. I like to see this ride as accessible as possible because the kids love it.
Next.
Sally Seaplane. Last year, guests must be 42 inches tall to ride alone or accompanied by a companion. So this one is now 42 to 60 inches tall to ride alone. So that's a maximum height change. And then minimum height accompanied is less than 42 inches. So that hasn't changed. So basically you can be an infant riding this. I think I might be too tall to ride this now. What's 60 divided by 12? Yeah, you can only be 5 feet tall to ride this. So sad pandas on that one. My days of Sally Seaplane are over, Don.
That is sad.
That is really sad.
But at least you got the credit before they changed it, right?
I did. And I always felt like I was dangerously tall to be riding it. Well, and again, we've talked about the maximum height requirements for some. I mean, there's some stuff like Delirium and formerly Firehawk where like your height really plays into the safety. But for stuff like this, where it's like it's designed for kids, like I'm willing to yield my seat for a kid because they can only really go in vertical circles while I can, ride the bat and they can't. Well, I mean, maybe they can now because the height requirement changed. But overall, very positive. We may see more out of this. I mean, full disclosure, these are the ones I found. I did not get the opportunity to scour through the whole thing. So it's quite possible that there could be more. This stuff could change. This is what's on the website as of this recording. So, generally speaking, except for Shake It On and Roll, of course, very, very positive changes.
Yeah, this used to always be a big deal whenever there were height requirement changes either way, and it was just quietly put out there on the website. And, it's something that obviously it's somebody goes to guest services and complains about it. They can always just point, well, it's on the website. You should have checked, but I think you avoid a lot of that too when that's being communicated out through your own, your owned and shared channels, so put it out there on, all your social channels and, write a blog about it just to say, before you go, here's what you need to know about some height requirement changes, just things like that. I mean, opening day is just around the corner, so when did you know about this too? That's the other question is, how long have you been sitting on this information? But time is of the essence now to let guests know. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this episode. So, we can inform at least our audience what's happening. And be sure to share the word with your friends, and if you've got your own social media and that, just let people know what the changes are, so we can make it as easy as possible on guest services, so they're not getting complaints on opening weekend.
Yeah, and I don't think the whole you should check the website thing holds water in this situation. My kid was tall enough for Shake, Rattle, and Roll on New Year's Eve. It's 5 months later; they're too short for it.
Yeah, but overall, it's a win. Yeah, overall, these changes are a win for the guests because you look at the bat. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, this is certainly a net positive. I really hope that they get the word out about these height changes because like I said, I feel like to a lot of people, this does not sound like a big deal, but for a lot of people, and it's a demographic that really matters, this means a lot, All right, let's kick it off with some Tower Topics tidbits. So first things first, an update on the Beast roller coaster. We did a previous episode saying that we were unable to properly procure information about whether or not the Beast would be ready for opening day. our opening weekend per se. The latest intel that we have says that the Beast is cycling. It has completed test cycle, not completed test cycles, but it has run test cycles. And it's looking like it's going to be ready for opening day. That's what all the
Yeah,
signs are pointing towards.
yeah, all signs point to that being ready to go opening weekend. We did that episode, last week. We tried to get information. We got the crickets. Uh,
Mhm.
but it's interesting how, they don't feel that it's the guest business. What's going to be open, what's not going to be open. The consumer, those buying the tickets, buying the passes, that's their business. They're not obligated to tell anybody, what's happening. But that's where, we come in. We're able to find out a lot of this information and share it with you because it does matter. I mean, if it was going to be a situation where it was not going to operate,
Mhm.
if you were say you're a single day ticket purchase, you're coming from Indianapolis, part of your reason for going is you want to ride the Beast. If you can know in advance that it's not going to run,
Right.
you're going to visit again another time when you can do that. So it's all about that transparency there. It's very important. You have people buying your tickets, buying your passes. They do have a right to know, especially when it's a signature attraction. Now, if it's something that's all of a sudden that morning something happens unforeseen, you have electrical issue, you know, something else happens where it's not going to run that day. That's totally different. But if 2 or 3 weeks in advance before the season starts, this isn't going to be ready, let people know.
Yeah, all they do is, pay to be there. So whatever. Next up, the water tower has been installed at Splash River Junction. The wading pools in this area will become a favorite place to slide, play, and stay cool as at Kings Island Soak City Water Park this summer. Both River Racers and Splash River Junction are expected to open when Soak City opens for the season on May 24th.
Yeah,
So
Ryan, that's a nice visual with that tower. I think it looks great.
I think it does too. I think it looks really nice. The ship thing seemed a little bit more robust than this, but at the same time, this kind of like the splash park kind of look and feel is what people kind of want nowadays, I feel like. So
Hmm.
net positive change, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, this to me looks, if you're trying to compare it to the Disney water parks and that, I mean, it's right there in that league. It looks very good.
Yeah, it looks nice. Um, Next up, let's talk about prestige passes because the park loves when I
Your
bring up.
favorite, your favorite topic.
Yeah, so intriguing. Canada's Wonderland has changed the benefits of the discount. So it used to be 15% off food and merchandise for prestige, 10% off for gold and silver. But they upped it to 20% off food and merchandise. That is actually a meaningful change. I get 20% off with my Disney pass down there, and that adds up quite a bit. Unfortunately, there's no word whether or not Kings Island will also follow suit or the other prestige pass parks.
Those are still what, at 15%?
It's a 15% discount with prestige.
Okay,
Cool.
still a pretty good discount.
Yeah.
But 20 is kind of a difference maker though.
20 feels like a big difference. It really does. So I
Especially if you're
really
going to buy merchandise, that seems like a pretty significant discount.
sure. Let's move on to a segment we like to call buy or sell.
All right, buy or sell. Kings Island receives a major launch coaster by 2030. Kings Island has gotten plenty of amazing coasters. The person that submitted just said, but none really feature or focus on a launch other than Backlot Stunt Coaster and Flight of Fear. So by 2030, we're going to have a new major launch coaster at Kings Island.
So, I mean, like define a major launch coaster, a Skyrocket 2, maybe. But if we're talking about something like a Big Bear Mountain, I don't think that's the type of investment that they're putting into Kings Island in the next half decade.
No,
What about you?
I'm going to sell too because 2030. I mean, it's a lot closer than you would think. I mean, it's not that many years away. You'd have to be planning for that pretty much right now. So I'm going to sell. I don't think so.
Yeah. So sell. Unfortunately, I would love to see that though. We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right, first listener question. This is from Matt from Cincinnati. He said, "Longtime listener, first time questioner. Can you get renowned beast expert Chad Showalter on the show? I could use a Helix tip." So I had to look up what he meant, and this is apparently so. Chad, the park spokesperson, said, "I often give the Helix tip before someone rides for the first time." What's the Helix tip?
Well, first of all, let's talk about this post on X by Chad there. What's he say? I often give.
Yeah.
No, you're not often asked about anything about the beast, or you're not at the beast in line with people riding for the first time, to often give a tip about that. And I have no idea what he's talking about. I think he just wants to sound like an expert on this. It's kind of fun sometimes to watch him like chime in, and it's almost like, what's that word? It's adorable. That's just to see,
It's predictable.
trying to be, sell himself as a park person, when they're really not. But I had to laugh when I saw the part about, often, that you just pulled up here, because no one's asking him, saying, I'm visiting the park, I'm gonna be riding the beast, any tips? That's not happening. And I don't know when the last time somebody outside of media was there, anyone saw him, back riding the beast. So, I don't know. But Chad, if you'd like to, either send us an email, I know you've got our email address, or you want to send a voicemail, you can do that now too, just to let us know what you mean by a Helix tip.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like to me, like I guess if I had a Helix tip, it would be to sit on like the left side of the train, because you get kind of a head chopper effect going into the tunnel. Do you think that's what he's
That,
talking
or
about?
I think back in the day when there wasn't the seat divider and you had the buzz bars,
Mm-hmm.
then you would definitely be wanting to give pointers to someone that is riding the beast, maybe for the first time, what they can expect going through that part of the ride. But I don't know. I mean, that was when you pulled that up, that was kind of fun to think about that and go, okay, what does he mean by that? And number two, the part where I often give this tip. No, you don't often give that tip.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next, we have Mark from New Richmond, Ohio. He says, I'm reading from those attending the preview days that Epic Universe lives up to the hype. Do you think that after someone visits Epic Universe that it's going to make Kings Island feel like a second-rate park?
Okay. So I actually am going to go to a preview in like 2 weeks, by the way. I was going to tell you that during the bonus content. So I get to go in like 2 weeks. I'm excited, and staying at Helios. I will tell you this, as somebody that goes down to those parks rather often, every 2 months or so, I never put myself in a situation where this coaster is better than Kings Island, this dark ride is better than Boo Blasters, because you understand what you're doing. It's not on the same plane. Where it does get comparable is when you have an issue and they go out of their way to fix it, or if they interact with you on social media or whatever. The attitude towards their guests is where I think that Kings Island makes themselves appear second rate, rather than the experience in the park. Because I don't go to like Knoebels and say they don't have a Giga coaster. I mean, I know what they are, I know what they do. I enjoy them in a different way than I enjoy Kings Island, which I enjoy in a different way than I enjoy from Universal.
Exactly. That's the way I feel about it too, that I don't think you're not trying to compare Epic Universe or Universal or Disney. You're not trying to compare it to Kings Island in that respect, in terms of what's offered, and what the different experiences and things are. I mean, it's just totally different type of things, and you don't go to Kings Island expecting a Universal or a Disney type experience with that. And you're right, it does come down to what's going to make it a second-rate type park is the way you're made to feel, by a park, in terms of that part of the guest experience. Do you feel valued? You don't feel valued. Little things like that is when that term second rate starts to kind of creep in a little bit about parks.
Yeah. Next question. Colin from Dayton, Ohio. He said, I've been coming to Kings Island since I was in middle school. I proposed to my now wife at Kings Island during Winterfest and now have a 4-year-old daughter of our own. I assume there were some other steps in between those two things. I've grown to love the park even more as we visit the park over 35 times every year. My daughter's favorite ride is the Grand Carousel, where we have to ride every time we visit. And her new favorite ride is Franklin's Flyers. For Dawn, congratulations on your new granddaughter a few months ago.
Thank you.
When she gets old enough, what are you most looking forward to riding at Kings Island with her? Excluding the Grand Carousel, since I know that's your favorite. We'll let you answer that, and he's got a question for me.
I think for me it would be that first time, maybe riding the racer with Melody. I think that would be a real big deal. I remember what it was like the first time my daughter could ride that ride with me. I mean, the other rides are all great. I think when you're talking about maybe some first type rides, if I couldn't put the carousel in there, I'm certainly talking about, the train would be, right up there. Maybe a ride, something like the Scrambler, Kings Mills Antique Autos, something like that would be on that list. But I think for me, the big milestone would be when she's tall enough to ride the racer and to be able to do that with her.
Yeah, absolutely. And then his question for me is, what's my favorite ride to ride with our field reporter, Noah? He also said, thanks for all you do. I never miss an episode. So thank you, Colin, for that. It's always really fun to ride new rides with Noah. So he recently got up to like the Banshee height about a year ago. So it's fun to ride that with him. But I will tell you a funny Noah story because I think you guys will enjoy it. He just got tall enough to ride Drop Tower. And I hate Drop Tower. I rode it once with him and his parents and so on because I had to a couple months ago. But I'm giving him, he went and got in line for it for the first time with his dad. And, I'm trying to psych him out. I'm like, oh man, like it's making funny noises. Like, I don't think it's going to work right. Like what's going on with this thing? So, he's completely averse to like any kind of fear whatsoever. So it goes up, it drops down, and he looks at me and goes, Ryan, it worked. Well, thank God it worked, because otherwise we would have been cleaning him up with a sponge.
Right.
But great question, Colin.
All right. The next question is from Brian, Cincinnati, Ohio. He says, what is your favorite theme park souvenir that you have from any park? Brian, you go first.
I brought pictures, I think. Hold on. Oh, found it. Mine, I've shown this before, I think. I showed this like at the end of an episode. The Spaceship Earth is like my favorite thing on Earth. So I got this figurine of it. They still sell it at Epcot, but you can see it lights up. It changes different colors and so on. But this is something, it was expensive. It was like $130 or something, but one of my most cherished things, because I just think of it, Spaceship Earth, when I look at it, and it puts me in a wonderful mood.
For me, it would be an item from King's Dominion, which would be the singing mushrooms. I have it's right there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. The heads, it's kind of like a little bobblehead type effect on those. But this would be my favorite souvenir item from any of the parks that I have.
I wish I saw that when I visited, because that would have come home with me.
They didn't have many. This was back in 2015, 2016 range when I obtained this. And, I'm a huge fan of the singing mushrooms. That caught my attention back in, the late 70s when the movie Roller Coaster, premiered. And one of the, the scenes, they're at King's Dominion and the Sky Ride is going into the station and the singing mushrooms are right below. And I was intrigued by them. And then my first visit to King's Dominion in 1984, I wanted to find, them, and I was intrigued by them and was very excited when they brought them back, as they were getting ready to celebrate their 40th anniversary. So, that's what makes it one of my favorite souvenir items that I have. Probably the favorite.
Very cool. Great questions. And if you want to submit your own questions, send them to Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com. Send your first name, the city you're from, and your question, and we'll feature some of them on each show. So we really enjoy interacting with everybody. You don't want to send an email for some reason, shoot us a tweet an X post, an X, whatever.
Yeah, put it through the direct message, because that way your question is kind of a surprise to people. Sometimes if people, they just make a regular post with the question, everybody chimes in, with what the answer and that is and things. So, try to keep it, a little bit offline if you can, so people are seeing it for the first time or hearing it for the first time on the show.
Yeah. Don, tell them about the t-shirts.
Tower Topics t-shirts, they come in a wicked green color. They come in whatever size you need, just $22. That'll include your shipping. If you're interested in one, send to that email address Ryan just gave out, which is Don Helbig at themeparksbydon.com, or you can send a message through X. We'll send you the QR code. Once the transaction goes through, we'll get that shirt out to you. And if you're attending Coaster Stock, you order now, you'll have it plenty of time to wear it at that event.
Yeah, we love to see them. Other big news out of Kings Island, by the way, before we wrap it up.
Yes, there is. We'd like to congratulate Kings Island on being the winner of the Coaster 101 Park Mania. This is a great thing that Coaster 101, does every year, but they were able to beat out Cedar Point with the Battle of Ohio. So congratulations to Kings Island.
Yeah, special shout out to the Kings Island Season Pass group, who definitely had a lot of something to do with them winning this thing, as they previously did with like the USA Today and different polls of that sort.
Yeah, it's interesting when the Season Pass base wants to help promote something like this. Kings Island performs exceptionally well on it. When they don't, they're oftentimes out of the top 10
or number 10.
Correct.
Hey, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.